Tune into ESG Matters with Risk Insights, where we explore ESG with impact. There are moments in history when the world is forced to pause and reflect, not on politics or strategy, but on humanity itself. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of ESG Matters with Risk Insights. I'm your host, Dr. Anushka Bogdanov. This week, the conflict in the Middle East has once again captured global attention. Military tensions between nations dominate headlines, analysts debate strategy, and markets react in real time. Yet behind all of this are ordinary people, families, communities, and children who find themselves caught in the crossfire of forces far beyond their control. One story that has shaken many across the world is the tragedy of young girls who were reportedly killed when a school in Iran was struck during the escalation. When children lose their lives in conflict, it transcends politics. It becomes a deeply human tragedy that reminds us that the cost of war is never abstract. It is measured in lives, futures, and families are forever changed. At the same time, families across the region are living under the constant threat of missile attacks and growing instability, while communities fear the conflict could expand further. Civilians, regardless of borders or nationalities, remain the most vulnerable in times of war. Moments like these call for empathy. Empathy for every child, for every parent, every family living under the shadow of violence. Beyond the humanitarian tragedy, this conflict also raises important questions about environmental risk and climate resilience, issues that are rarely discussed when war dominates global headlines. Conflict leaves a profound environmental footprint. Military operations release significant greenhouse gas emissions, damage ecosystems, contaminate soil and water systems, and destroy critical infrastructure. Energy facilities, pipelines, and industrial sites are often targeted, creating environmental damage that can take decades to repair. The Middle East is already one of the regions most exposed to climate stress. Rising temperatures, water scarcity, and desertification are long-term realities for many countries in the region. When conflict disrupts infrastructure, water systems, electricity grids, and agricultural supply chains, it weakens societies that are already under climate pressure. Environmental risk and conflict are increasingly interconnected. Climate stress can contribute to instability, and war can accelerate environmental degradation. It becomes a cycle that makes recovery even more difficult. Then there is the humanitarian dimension. War disrupts education, healthcare, food security, and economic stability. Children who grow up in conflict zones often face trauma that lasts a lifetime. Entire generations can be shaped by the absence of stability and opportunity. This is why the decisions that global leaders make in moments like this carry such enormous weight. For countries involved in the conflict, several paths may lie ahead. One option is escalation, where military responses intensify and the conflict expands across the region. History has shown us that once conflicts widen, they become increasingly difficult to contain. Another option is deterrence, where states seek to demonstrate strength while avoiding full-scale war. And then there is diplomacy, often the most difficult path, but historically the most durable one. Diplomacy requires negotiation, compromise, and the willingness to recognize that long-term stability often depends on dialogue rather than domination. Throughout history, even the most entrenched conflicts have eventually required diplomatic engagement. Quiet negotiations, international mediation, and security agreements have often succeeded where military escalation failed. For countries observing the situation from afar, including South Africa, the implications are significant. South Africa's economy is deeply integrated into global markets, and events in the Middle East quickly influence energy prices. If the conflict disrupts oil supply routes, global oil prices could rise sharply. For South Africa, which imports a large portion of its fuel, this translates directly into higher petrol prices, increased transportation costs, and inflationary pressure on households. Rising fuel costs affect food prices, logistics, and the overall cost of living, placing additional pressure on families already navigating economic challenges. At the same time, geopolitical uncertainty often drives investors towards safe haven assets such as gold. As one of the world's historic gold producers, South Africa could experience increased demand for its mining exports during periods of global instability. Yet the broader impact goes beyond economics. South Africa has historically positioned itself as a country that advocates for dialogue, peace, and multilateral cooperation. Our diplomatic voice often reflects a belief that long-term stability requires negotiation and understanding rather than escalation. In a world already facing climate change, economic uncertainty, and geopolitical fragmentation, moments like this test the resilience of international cooperation. Perhaps the most important lesson from history is that wars are rarely remembered for the victories declared by governments. They are remembered for the lives lost, the communities displaced, and the children who never had the chance to grow up. The girls who lost their lives at the school in Iran should remind us of something fundamental. The pursuit of peace is not simply a political choice. It is a moral responsibility. Empathy, diplomacy, and responsible leadership remain humanity's strongest tools for preventing cycles of violence. Because ultimately, the future of our planet, environmentally, economically, and socially, depends on our collective ability to choose cooperation over conflict. History reminds us that almost every war eventually ends at the negotiating table. This is ESG Matters with Risk Insights. Ciao for now.